It was supposed to be Oscar Piastri's comeback, a hard-fought recovery that would keep him on top of the World Championship. But in the space of 10 seconds, everything froze. Literally. A yellow board flashed, engines dipped, the crowd went silent. And just like that, a virtual safety car sealed the fate of the Mexican Grand Prix, and maybe McLaren's title race. If you love F1 without the noise, hit subscribe and let's get into it. Until that moment, Piastri had been flying, carving through the midfield after a chaotic start that saw him tumble to 11th. By lap 68, he was hunting down Oliver Bearman, the Haas rookie on the verge of his career-best finish. Fourth place was within reach, and with it, the precious single point that would keep his 6-month championship lead alive. But when Carlos Sainz's Williams stopped in the Estadio section, the FIA deployed a virtual safety car just as Piastri was preparing to attack. The race froze. No overtaking, no drama, no redemption. When the clock hit 0, the Australian crossed the line in 5th, and Lando Norris, his own teammate, became the new World Championship leader by 1 point. That moment didn't just decide a race, it reignited McLaren's internal war. The irony of Formula One is that sometimes the car stops moving, but the pressure doesn't. Under the virtual safety car, every driver's instincts turn into equations. Throttle percentages, delta targets, tire temperature decay. For Oscar Piastri, it meant watching a championship slip away at 80 kilometers per hour. At that moment, telemetry told a cruel story. Piastri's McLaren was closing on Bearman at roughly 0.3 per lap. His tire life was perfect, the energy deployment synced. Then, the VSC neutralized everything. Gaps froze in time. Drivers had to maintain a precise speed window or risk a penalty. No room for attack, no space for risk. It's the system's purpose, safety above all, yet it felt brutally unfair. Carlos Sainz's Williams, stranded in the Estadio section, had triggered the procedure, but its timing couldn't have been worse for the Australian. Even Max Verstappen, who had been pushing for second, called the ending a shame for everyone watching. Inside the McLaren's pit wall, the radios went quiet. Engineers could only calculate what might have been. For Piastri, all that data meant one truth. One race, 1 point. One moment frozen by physics. From the outside, it looked like a dream day for McLaren. A dominant win, a double top 5, and their first victory in Mexico since 1989. But inside the orange garage, celebration and silence mixed uneasily, because every point that built Lando Norris's triumph came at Oscar Piastri's expense. Norris had driven a near-perfect race, 30 seconds clear of Charles Leclerc, managing tires, fuel, and pace with the confidence of a driver finally in control of his own story. It was his 6th win of the season, enough to overturn a championship deficit that had lasted half a year. But when the cameras cut to Piastri, his eyes told another narrative. One of a driver realizing the gap wasn't just in points, but in momentum. Yesterday, it became obvious there were a few things I needed to change. I've had to drive very differently, or not differently, when I should have. It was a revealing statement, not frustration, but reflection. The kind that shows how fragile a title challenge can be when the same car behaves like two different beasts. As Norris basked in the boos of a Mexican crowd that didn't quite know what to feel, Piastri quietly processed the cost of losing control, not of his car, but of the championship narrative. Every title fight eventually becomes a science experiment. Same car, same tires, yet different results. At McLaren, those invisible margins between Oscar Piastri and Lando Norris are now measured in milliseconds, in the way they load the front axle, in the way they trust the rear to rotate. In Mexico, that difference was exposed. Norris adapted early to the evolving grip levels and shifting balance as the fuel burned off. Piastri, by contrast, found himself trapped between two instincts, pushing hard to regain places, but cautious not to shred the tires. His admission said it all. I've had to drive very differently, or not differently when I should have. It was a revealing statement, not frustration, but reflection, the kind that shows how fragile a title challenge can be when the same car behaves like two different beasts. As Norris basked in the boos of a Mexican crowd that didn't quite know what to feel, Piastri quietly processed the cost of losing control, not of his car, but of the championship narrative. 1 point. That's all it took for 6 months of control to vanish. After the checkered flag in Mexico, the numbers on the timing screen told a brutal truth. Lando Norris, 357. Oscar Piastri, 356. Max Verstappen, 321. A season's balance rewritten by decimals. For Piastri, 4th place would have meant parity, both McLaren drivers level at the top, a statement that the rookie season glory hadn't faded, but 5th meant surrendering the psychological edge. In Formula 1, even 1 point reshapes strategy. From now, Norris holds track position priority in team meetings and the first call on optimal pit windows. Piastri becomes the hunter, not the hunted. McLaren team principal Andrea Stella knows the numbers matter beyond the spreadsheet. Internally, every point defines hierarchy. Norris's win wasn't just a boost, it was leverage. Political, strategic, emotional. And while Verstappen quietly claws back form with another podium, McLaren now must manage what Red Bull once feared: 2 drivers fast enough to win, but only 1 championship to claim. When the race ended, McLaren's pit wall looked calm, but behind the mirrored visors and clipped radio replies, tension simmered. Engineers replayed data in silence. The orange shirts who had celebrated Norris's win barely made eye contact with Piastri's side of the garage. On paper, the team had achieved a perfect result. In reality, it felt like a fracture. Inside the radio room, you could hear the difference. Norris's engineer Will Joseph sounded measured and proud. "Brilliant job, mate. That's the one we needed." Piastri's side, led by Tom Stollard, was quieter, respectful, but heavy with unfinished business. "Solid recovery, Oscar. We'll review everything." That review means hours of debriefings, data overlays, and uncomfortable questions. Did the team pit him too late? Did the car setup favor Norris? Or was it simply execution? For Stella, the answer will define how McLaren navigates the next 4 races, without turning a rivalry into a civil war. The irony: both garages wear the same color, yet each believes the other holds the advantage. And in Formula 1, that belief often decides who drives faster when the visor drops. There's a particular silence that follows defeat. Not the angry kind, but the analytical one. Oscar Piastri carried that silence through the McLaren hospitality unit after the race. No visible frustration, no complaints about luck, just a quiet determination to understand why. He spoke of learning, not losing. "The biggest thing is to learn the things I want to learn." He said this, a sentence that sounded like code for something deeper. Piastri isn't the type to deflect blame. He internalizes it, turns it into data, into process. That mindset is what turned him into one of the sharpest rookies in recent F1 history. But behind the calm tone, there's fire. Every driver knows that championships aren't decided by speed alone. They're built on the ability to adapt faster than anyone else. The Mexican Grand Prix gave Piastri a painful, precise lesson that even the fastest car can't outrun timing. As the team packed up, his mechanics patted the monocoque gently, a superstition, a promise. Because the next time he's in that car, he won't just be chasing points, he'll be chasing control. 4 races. That's all that separates McLaren from its first Drivers' Championship since 1980, and from the risk of losing everything to itself. The Norris-Piastri duel is no longer a subplot, it's the story of the season. One driver reborn, another reloading. One team split by brilliance. In the next rounds, Sao Paulo, Las Vegas, Qatar, and Abu Dhabi, strategy will decide more than speed. Track position will dictate who the pit wall trusts, and every undercut or slow stop could redraw the standings again. Norris now plays the cautious leader, Piastri the calculated aggressor, and both know Max Verstappen is quietly waiting to pounce on their mistakes. As F1 heads into its final stretch, McLaren's engineers will talk of numbers and margins, but the real battle lives in emotion, how 2 teammates handled the thin line between rivalry and respect. Because in this championship, the stopwatch isn't the enemy, time is. If you want to see how this fight unfolds, stay tuned for the next episode of McLaren Civil War,
Piastri strikes back.